If you're eating, enjoy your meal. I wish you a good day, that everything goes well, and enjoy the video. Get comfortable and pay attention to this story.
Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into the life and legacy of a guy who is honestly so much more than just a rapper. We're unpacking the incredible journey of Nasir Ben Olu Jones, better known to the world, of course, as Nas. But listen, we aren't just going to do a basic run-through of his discography here. Instead, we're looking at his life through a really specific, kind of unique lens. We're going to explore how his legendary career as a street poet actually mirrors the high-stakes, gripping arc of an epic comic book. Crazy fact to start us off, growing up, one of hip-hop's absolute greatest lyricists actually wanted to be a comic book artist. And you know what? That childhood dream is the absolute perfect framework for us today. We're going to look at his life as if it were a literal hero's journey. Because, like every great hero, Nas has an origin story, a tragic inciting incident, a meteoric rise to glory, monumental battles, and ultimately a triumphant resolution. I mean, his life story plays out just like an epic graphic novel. We're going to see exactly how a young kid from New York navigated unbelievable heartbreak, intense rivalries, and sweeping industry changes, all while managing to hold on to his authenticity. It's a true story of resilience that honestly reads like absolute fiction. Chapter 1, The Queensbridge Origin Story, Roots and Survival. So every hero needs a beginning, right? Born in Brooklyn to a jazz trumpeter father, music was literally in his blood. But a family split back in 1986 changed absolutely everything. That family shift brought them here to Queensbridge, which is actually the largest public housing complex in all of North America. It was an incredibly tough, fast-paced, and gritty environment. The everyday demands of just surviving in this setting were so intense that Nas actually ended up dropping out of school in the 8th grade. He had to turn to the streets just to get by, but hey, dropping out of formal education did not mean he stopped learning, not even close. In fact, you can really think of this era as his autodidactic training montage. Nasty Nas never stopped educating himself. He devoured literally everything he could get his hands on. He studied books on African civilizations, he read the Bible, he absorbed the teachings of the 5% Nation, and he practically memorized the deep roots of hip-hop history. He'd sit up in his bedroom, recording these homemade radio tapes with his neighbor and best friend, DJ Willie Ill Will Graham, just sharpening his pen and getting ready for his debut. And that brings us to the inciting incidents of our story. At just 17 years old, Nas caught the ear of legendary Queensbridge producer Large Professor. In 1991, he delivered this absolute show-stopping guest verse on Main Source's track Live at the Barbecue. The underground scene totally exploded, but the major labels, they were still hesitating. Then unthinkable tragedy struck. On May 23, 1992, his best friend and DJ, Ill Will, was tragically shot and killed right in Queensbridge. Absolutely devastated, Nas channeled all of that immense pain directly into his writing. Later that same year, MC Serch stepped in as his manager and finally secured a deal with Columbia Records, setting the stage for his massive debut. Chapter 2, Crafting the Masterpiece, Illmatic. Now, with expectations sky high after his debut, fans were actually pretty terrified that a corporate giant like Columbia would water down his raw New York street sound. But man, they couldn't have been more wrong. Released in April 1994, Nas assembled an absolute all-star dream team for Illmatic. Just look at this production roster. Large Professor, Pete Rock, Q-Tip, and DJ Premier. I mean, wow. He even brought his own father, Olu into the studio to play the trumpet on Life's a Bitch, and he cleverly sampled Michael Jackson's Human Nature for It Ain't Hard to Tell. With these sweeping, cinematic anthems like NY State of Mind and The World Is Yours, Nas painted this vivid, poetic picture of street life that literally nobody had ever heard before. The sheer cultural weight of this first victory was just staggering. To this day, Illmatic is widely considered the greatest hip-hop album ever recorded, period. It made him an instantly in-demand guest star across the board. He delivered iconic verses from Mobb Deep, AZ, and get this, he even became one of the very few outsiders to ever appear on a Wu-Tang Clan solo project when he featured on Raekwon's Verbal Intercourse. The underground street poet had officially arrived. Chapter 3, Superstardom and Studio Chaos. Because, as we know, every hero's journey gets super complicated when they finally hit the mainstream. To survive this rapidly changing industry landscape, Nas fundamentally shifted his persona. We go from Nasty Nas, the raw, gritty, underground street poet, straight to Nas Escobar, a cinematic, mobster-inspired mainstream superstar. He dropped his second album, It Was Written, featuring mega hits like If I Ruled the World with Lauryn Hill and Street Dreams. Backed by high-budget music videos directed by Hype Williams, Nas was suddenly an international superstar. But this massive, rapid expansion became incredibly chaotic in the late 90s. He birthed the supergroup The Firm, alongside AZ, Foxy Brown, and Cormega. He starred alongside DMX in the cult classic movie Belly. But behind the scenes, it was a total scramble. In 1999, his highly anticipated double album, I Am, the Autobiography, actually leaked onto the early internet before its release. This nightmare scenario forced Nas to rush right back into the studio to record brand new material, hastily splitting his work into two separate albums, I Am and Nostradamus. Chapter 4: The Legendary Hip-Hop War. Right in the middle of this wildly chaotic era, we reach the true boss battle of our graphic novel arc. In 2001, Jay-Z dropped Takeover, a track that directly and very publicly attacked Nas's career trajectory and his recent musical output. Nas's counterattack? Ether. It was a ruthless, fiery diss track that sent absolute shockwaves through the entire industry. When the dust finally settled, radio polls voted Ether as the definitive victory. Nas used this massive surge of momentum to release his critically acclaimed comeback album Stillmatic, proving to the world that his pen was as short as it ever was. But true heroes grow, right? The most miraculous part of this whole battle wasn't the diss tracks themselves, it was the resolution. In 2005, the two rap icons officially ended their feud. They joined forces on stage to perform together in a historic, truly monumental moment for hip-hop culture. It showed profound growth beyond the rivalry, setting the stage perfectly for his next chapter. Chapter 5: Expanding the Empire. Moving into the 2000s and 2010s, we watch our protagonist transition from the battlefield straight into the boardroom, transforming into a savvy businessman, investor, and philanthropist. But critically, he never stopped pushing artistic boundaries in the recording booth, consistently defying mainstream expectations. He released Godson in 2002, which was a deeply emotional tribute to his late mother, featuring the uplifting anthem, I Can. He dropped a bold double album, Street's Disciple, and then he literally sparked nationwide debates with his 2006 album Hip Hop Is Dead. He even collaborated with reggae royalty Damian Marley on the powerful 2010 joint album Distant Relatives. And beyond the music, he stepped in front of the camera for PBS to trace his family lineage, uncovering his ancestors' deep African-American roots. His cultural influence had grown so wide that it culminated in a massive milestone in 2013. That year, Harvard University officially established the Nasir Jones Hip-Hop Fellowship in his honor, an entire program dedicated to funding scholars and artists in the arts. Just take a second to think about that leap. From an 8th grade dropout in public housing to a Harvard namesake. It's absolutely wild. Chapter 6: A Triumphant Career Renaissance. Fast forward us to the 2020s, where Nas basically decides to completely rewrite the rules of aging in hip-hop. Partnering up with producer Hit Boy, Nas released a staggering run of 6 critically acclaimed albums, back-to-back across the King's Disease and Magic series. It was an unprecedented resurgence that reminded absolutely everyone exactly why he is a master of the craft. Which led directly to this year, 2021, the ultimate triumphant resolution of his graphic novel arc. After decades in the industry and after shifting culture multiple times over, Nas finally won his very first Grammy Award. So, looking back at this unbelievable journey, we really have to ask ourselves, how does a teenager writing rhymes in a Queensbridge notebook, surviving the largest public housing complex in North America, navigating heartbreak and crazy industry chaos, become a Grammy-winning Harvard namesake? What is the broader lesson we can take from this epic trajectory? Well, his story proves that true poetry, authenticity, and a relentless dedication to your craft will always stand the test of time. Think about how you can apply that exact kind of unwavering dedication to your own life's work. It's an incredible, inspiring legacy. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you on the next one.